Hello, and welcome back. We made it quite far in our last video, so I'm proud of the progress. Hopefully we'll make a little bit more. You can see a little preview of what we covered last week here. I don't know if I gave a disclaimer on the last video, but just my normal disclaimer. I'm a fan. I don't make any money from this. I don't have ads. I'm not part of YouTube partners or anything like that. I do all this because I am obsessive compulsive about certain things, and my ADHD has latched onto Death Stranding and absolutely adores what Hideo Kojima is doing. And something about looking through the trailers and looking at all the details and trying to figure out what could be happening next just really scratches an itch in my brain and makes me really happy. Helps me ignore the fact that everything is getting really crazy in the real world. And so if you want to leave a mean comment, I would hope that you would not, but if you do, just know it gets blocked. And everyone that does comment is here because they also just really enjoy what Hideo is creating, and also maybe they're bored and they just want to enjoy looking at close-ups of the trailer. Not everybody has time to break down the trailer like this, so I hope you guys enjoy it, and let's get right into it. So we're going to watch this in slow-mo just so you guys can get a better look at what's going on. It appears that he sees a robot mech from down below, and then we see what appears to be like tar shooting up on the right, and then the robot comes down. So what I'm unclear about and what I'm hoping to break down here is whether or not the bike came out of the tar, or if the bike and him are working together and it just looks as though the bike is attacking him. So let's look at this one more time. It definitely comes out of the tar. There is no rider on this bike, and there's actually a sword or javelin type weapon coming out from the actual bike itself. You can see it there on the left. We'll zoom in on this in just a second, but it's so difficult to see that I really wanted to give you guys time to watch it in slow-mo and understand kind of what we're looking at. So if that is the same scene, then that has popped up, in a totally different area than where he was at. We can also see water underneath him that wasn't there before. I'm wondering, is that a tar current, or are we actually going over water? Another thing is, if you notice the road, side lights, I don't know guardrails, they're actually red instead of blue. I would assume that means that you can't use them or something. Right there it says locked, I think. I'll zoom in on that in a moment, but just one more time, let's really look at this motorcycle. It has very similar wheels to his own. It has like a blue light to it. So I'm wondering, can these robots just overtake things? But now that we've seen it a few times in slow-mo, let's do some screen grabs and see what details we can find. I noticed that the rain right by his knee, it splashes so hard, and at first I thought that this was like a tar lake coming up around him, but upon further investigation and looking at it more closely, I think we're just going to be in some sort of a monsoon. I also think it's really cool that we have purple on our drawbridge instead of blue, and I'm wondering, will we get to choose that color? And also, I like that this is like a defensive trike. It appears that we have almost like things over our shoulders to keep us safe. This is comical because now that I'm looking closely at the armor that he has for his shoulder, it says do not alter without approval, and this looks exactly like what Charlie had on their neck piece in the last video. But upon further inspection, unfortunately, that theory is debunked. Now, moving back to Sam, I do think it's interesting he seems to be back in his sort of digital camo outfit, which is not what he was wearing when he met with Hartman, but does appear to be the outfit that he wears the most. I think another thing that really is confusing me, gameplay-wise, is that his Odra deck is never on. It never seems to alert him. He's always like, oh, what is that? And then his Odra deck is doing nothing. So I'm thinking is it purely for climbing and stability purposes? Like, does it no longer give us like ideas where things are at? Is that all going to be Dahlman? I feel like that was such a huge feature of the last game that I'm surprised we haven't seen it at all in gameplay. For those of you who are interested in the automobiles, here's a close-up of his type. It says Type E 834D FS colon 348, and then a string of numbers that's a little bit harder for me to see, but it looks something like 60 and then 34654. So some of those numbers seem the same on both levels. What I don't know, because I'm not really familiar with the old game's vehicles, is were those vehicles also by type? I remember they were by like battery life, and I know that there are certain objects that we've seen, like the jackets that say like level 9, and people are assuming that that means that's the level of time fall resistance that they have. So if you know kind of about the automobiles and you know what that could mean, I would love to know. This part is blurry, so we're not sure, but one of those words says hazard. It may say burn hazard because below it, near the engine, we see burn hazard, hot surface, and then it says allow to cool before servicing. So I love that. That's like a level of realism of that. It just amazes me, all of the details that you can see on these vehicles. There was a post on Reddit about Sam and how whenever he fist pumps at the distro at F2, that a red symbol kind of pops up, and it looks like it did whenever he had the handcuffs on, but we know that he's not wearing those anymore. What I did think about was in this scene, it's the first time I've seen anything light up on his wrist. In previous scenes, we've not been able to see this before, so it's possible that his suit can show holograms or something to that extent. And I think that might be what turned red in that Reddit post. Another thing that's really obvious with all of these vehicles is you can really see Sam's feet, and that sounds strange, and we can make a lot of like feet jokes because Hideo always gives those on his Instagram, but I literally think, in the first game, I don't know if you guys struggled with this, but it was kind of hard to learn the walking mechanic, because it's the first time you've ever been given this odd way of walking and holding cargo and having to hold different buttons like that, and it just felt weird. I'm wondering if we will have anything similar to that in the automobiles that we'll be utilizing, because they seem like a really big part of this game, and I know that so many people wanted more automobiles, wanted more like trikes, and everybody makes like a big deal about those trucks that you could see at the distros and how we never got to use those. And I just wonder if he took that criticism and has really funneled it into like some sort of vehicular control that will annoy us at first and then become really fun. Like, how cool would it be if you could actually be shifting gears? I have a hard time seeing this clip and understanding what I'm looking at. It's only a couple seconds, and this is actually lowered to 20% of the clip speed. So let's brighten it up and see what we can figure out. I definitely think that it is a vehicle, but I'm not quite sure it's the same one that attacks us. It looks quite large, and it seems like there are some things trailing it. Okay, so it's definitely one large motorcycle, probably the one we fight, and what appears to be two smaller vehicles behind us, or behind it. Also, we can see for the first time the road still has that weird chiral matter dripping down from it, and the red lights on that side to me are implying that that is a weapon, because we always know that weapons are locked when things turn red. It appears that we have three vehicles, a large one, a really small one, and then what I think is attacking us is at the end, because I see what looks to be like a sword or javelin-like weapon. We definitely can see the tar here, so that is correct. That does say locked, but I can't really read the other part yet. What I think is really interesting about this, though, is I feel like there's almost a BT that appeared in the middle of the road. You see like almost an outline of it. These flashing words almost look like words. It almost looks like it says locked, but there's just an odd spacing. And I wonder if we find any more of these, will we be able to unlock the strange font that we're seeing everywhere? Because if you could unlock those letters, then you can decipher the coffin, you can decipher a lot of the screens and what we've seen the Odra deck flashing. So I don't know, but I do think it's weird that APAC, who's building the roads, and Higgs's Odra deck and the armor on the villains in the game all use the same dotted language. I also think it's really crazy that they're coming out of Tar, which definitely means that they are able to access the beach and probably anywhere that's connected to a chiral network, which is unfortunate because that's how we use our roads. And then you see that dust that has appeared there. At first I thought it was sparks, but I think it might be like the gold glittering particles we saw when Lou and Fragile hit the ground after they fell off of their bike. And someone had commented maybe that Lou didn't realize it, but somehow she was trying to cushion her fall. But it could be that these particles appear whenever you're jumping through time, and so maybe it has something to do with that, because we do know that Fragile and Lou both tried to teleport at that time. I thought this was so comical because one of the major complaints that people have is that there's cargo or vehicles just left on the road, and then you hit it and you either destroy it or you totally fall off your own trike. And so the fact that there's like a cargo just abandoned on this road in the middle of like a mini boss fight is just really funny to me. Here's a really good look at the sword javelin thing that this motorcycle mech is carrying. And it's interesting because it kind of reminds me of the end of Higgs's guitar. It's got like a real weird end to it, almost like if you shattered a sword. I'll try to zoom in on that whenever we get a better shot of it. But here it's landing after it's come out of that tar. And let's look at some of the zoom in shots. So I don't know if this was in the first game or if this is like an actual real company, but PHI, Phi or Phi is on the back of that trike that we're driving. And then here is the Ghost Mech one, and you can see kind of that reminiscent shape jutting out. I also thought it was kind of interesting that Sam shoots first. He does not take any prisoners in this trailer. I didn't know what I was looking at first, but that's him. He's got a gun pulled and everything. Check out the close-up. We also finally see the Odra deck in action for the first time, but it's just like facing forward. It's not even pointing at the mech, so I don't know if it's pointing at like a greater entity that we can't see. Like maybe there is someone controlling this from afar, Higgs, whoever, unnamed villain. Maybe it's pointing towards the source of the power, but it is fun to finally see the Odra deck come out because I was starting to worry that it just didn't function. We might also be utilizing it for like an auto aiming feature, because this is the same gun that we were using with the mules that we saw in a previous video where we shot their head off, or their hat off, their helmet, not their head. Close though. And I'm wondering, is this sort of like an auto aiming component? So perhaps you just pull the gun out and it does the work for you. We have hit that cargo that was in the middle of the road, and I'm not really sure why they included this. Maybe just to show us how the trike would work if we did that. But it seems to be sturdy because in the next scene we're back on our feet. Our wheel has evidently hit their wheel, or they're just cutting it way too fast. But you can see that the weapon that we were looking at previously does have lightning coming out of it, just like Higgs's guitar does. So we're going to zoom in and we're going to kind of compare. I just want to point out that we're starting to see a couple similarities between the motorcycles, mostly in the wheels. And really, I'm just bringing that up kind of to reiterate that it seems like all the weapons and everything that we're seeing are just iterations on each other, such as like the guitar seems to be an iteration of the sword or vice versa. We have everything that we have, the enemy seems to have, and it's unclear who created what first. The fact that we had cuffs in the last game and now the APAC people have cuffs, the fact that We have Higgs with this electric guitar, literally, and then we have Samurai Baby with a sword, but we also have these robot mechs with swords. It's curious to me because Robot Baby, or Red Samurai as he's called, hasn't shown up yet in our ordered trailer, but has a sword, doesn't particularly have electric energy, but is dressed very similarly to how Higgs is, and a lot of people just assume that Lou took over a robot's body and was fighting for Sam, but to me that doesn't make that much sense, because I don't see, even if Lou was like 100 years old somehow, they don't have the knowledge of like a samurai fighting, and samurais have a lot of culture and lore attached to them, and I don't think Hideo would just take that so lightly. It seems like it might be insulting to just be like, yeah, it doesn't take any skill to be a samurai, especially whenever samurais are often like depicted as like going on like a spirit, sorry I'm saying like so much, but going on a spiritual journey. Like they go out, they seek, they have these missions, they're very deeply rooted in like their beliefs, and so for it just to be like a baby for laughs would be weird. Not saying it's not possible, I just don't think it's right for the story. I think instead that Red Samurai will be hijacking certain things from Higgs and APAC, so literally, hacking, for lack of a better word, into their systems, hijacking their robots. And why they would be after Sam, I'm not clear. But if Sam is connecting the chiral network and perhaps Red Samurai Baby does not want that, then I could see where maybe they're coming after us. I also want to point out that this robot is not just connected to the sword, like it's not stuck in them and they're utilizing it as an arm. That is a robot arm holding the sword with a robot hand, and then having like that really large hand guard. So I thought that was kind of funny. So that means we could probably knock that sword out of their hand, which makes me wonder, can I have that sword? Can I like get a weapon from the robots and keep it? One of the reasons I keep calling this Higgs robot, even if he's not the one in charge of it or if it's been hijacked, is because it's sporting the same emblem, the Ghost Mech, Ghost Merch emblem that has kind of been implied to be Higgs's brand. So whether or not it will actually end up being his company, we don't know, but just so you know, it does have the logo. I also wanted to point out that I wasn't sure what these red marks were on the wall, because at first I thought that was like a weapon or like sparks flying between us hitting each other, but that's actually the safety mechanism on the road so you can't fall off, which is great to know, because my first thought was, how am I not gonna die if I'm in a boss battle in a vehicle and trying to drive and shoot? So it looks like there are some safety features even for the bad guys, because he doesn't seem to be falling off the road either. I think we're basically in the same area. I want to point out that that looks like it's meant to keep people in or out. Can't be sure. Don't like these symbols, although the one on the bottom right is definitely from Higgs's hood. When we look at these, I'm like, those are bombs. We're definitely going to get blown up. These symbols I want you to remember, because look at this gun. That looks really similar to me, and I'm a little bit worried about it. Something that I noticed on the robots were the way their panels work is they're like sort of like LED panels that can open outward and then they turn into Odradecks. So what I'm curious about with their faces, if they are just an Odradeck face, and the ones in the back with the circles and the targeting centers, that's what they look like when they're not closed. The person in the front has a closed Odradeck and the one in the back has the open Odradeck. So that's kind of a nifty thing that I didn't initially notice. And it kind of brings up a funny point. Like, I wonder, we see in a second that he has like an exclamation mark on his face. And that kind of brings up, like, maybe you can make them emote. It'll be really funny if Higgs like makes them put like pizza emojis or something. On the left side of the screen, we have The lights that are coming off of the mask are interesting because they are like projected. They're almost like lasers. So they're not exactly LED. The lights are coming off or like being projected outwards, more like a hologram, I guess. And then we have the stick that's being held that has the cult icon on top and like a little arm. I wish I had that like scary movie meme where he's like, grab my small hand, because they have like a tiny little robot arm holding that staff. Beyond that, we have these lights that appear on the cyborgs, which I find interesting because obviously we know they're being powered by something, but the lights on the coffin part are confusing to me because why do you need power? What are you keeping alive? And if you're not keeping anything alive, are these things just like ran on generator energy? Like, first, my question is, where's the power coming from? Which is, everything in this game seems to have like electricity. Their costumes have light up LEDs in them, all this stuff. And yet, we don't really get an explanation on how they're being powered. We don't see battery packs. We don't really see anything that kind of gives us an idea of how that's working. Now, we know that Sam's skeleton stuff has like the blue light and we can recharge in water and all that, rigmarole from the first game. But the robots I'm curious about because, to use batteries, you have to be pretty weatherproof, and so that would mean that these are definitely going to be following us like we saw the bike in the rain, but it also gives us an idea of their ability to withstand. So maybe there is something inside these things that needs to be protected because they have the coffin on the back, so there's obviously something in that coffin. The thing that makes me nervous is that later in the trailer we'll do some zoom ins, and it'll not be in this video, but Higgs is connected to his coffin via an umbilical cord, in a roundabout way. We'll get there. And it makes me imagine, since these have coffins as well, that is how these things are being piloted, which worries me because there's either going to be children in there or some form of creature or person or a person's soul that's piloting these things, because I don't think they're robotic. It wouldn't make sense to me that they are just purely mechanical with no humanoidness to them. I guess just because Kojima is such a big proponent of humanity, and even in the Metal Gear Solid series, where a lot of people like to bring that up, his AI was based on humans, or it would literally be like, we put this human in a bottle and now this person is an AI. And I don't know, I just feel like he has a real issue with artificial technology, and I think he finds it insulting to human intelligence and connection, and I think we're going to see that here. Which brings me to the dog. This feels like robot on robot violence. Because here's the thing. If you were a military member or someone in combat, you would not be throwing the person next to you out to fight in front of you. It just feels weird. It feels like he's just throwing out this attack dog, which I know in military, sure, or even in real life, we have attack dogs. But if we are assuming that both of these things are robots, and they both share like the same connected conscience, or whatever artificial intelligence is out there, there's like three ways we can think about it. One, this is the same consciousness, like I have to whisper it, like an Alexa, and everything that has it is going to answer to that name and be that same mechanical AI. The second thing that it could be is that they are individualized, and they do have like their own, I guess, intelligence between them, but they're all kind of like part of this greater entity, like a hive mind sort of. And then you kind of get in this weird thing of, so do these robots see themselves as levelized, where they know that the dog is lesser than them, and the vehicles are the vehicular robots above or below the dogs? Like, that's a weird thing. So I don't know about that. line of thought. I think it would be better if all of these, if we're going to go with their AI and mechanical, it would just be better if they were all on the same level, because then it would make more sense. This is one AI with one singular purpose. Because if you start thinking about them as AIs that are working together under a human overlord, like that can't end well. And then the third thing is that they're not AI at all, or they're a combination of AI and human, which also worries me, because if you are an AI and human combo, so the way I would imagine it is, we know the pods on their backs probably have some sort of life form, and therefore I would think that is the human part. I almost said the AI, but I would think that the cyborgs with the backpacks would be the humanoid part, or have the human caw inside them, or whatever is piloting them. And then I would assume the robots are purely technology. They are purely AI in some way, because when I look at them, they have batteries. So its tail, which I couldn't get a good look at, I'll see if I can bring up a video, but basically the dog's tail has a connector port on it. So basically it's an Odra deck, but it's not an Odra deck, if that makes sense. So the Odra deck on the robots is their head, and for the robot dog, it's their head, but this is also a part of it. It's kind of similar to how I imagine like maybe how Higgs's guitar thing works, because it kind of looks like it has a little amp type port in the center of it. And I'm curious if this plugs into something bigger, or if it's charging, if it's somehow connected in some way. Because if you look at the actual robot outfits, you have the blue lights showing that they are powered. And I find that curious too, because the dog is red. There are no blue lights on it. All of its lights are red, and that is at odds with what we know about the color theory in the game, because typically in the game, when you have Bridges gear, you have blue, and when you have Homo Demons, you have red, and sometimes things get a little mixy and things like that, but for the most part, like, everything's color-coded pretty recognizably, because, I mean, it's a game. You need to be able to easily know what's going to kill you and what's not. So it is interesting that the robot dogs are distinctly weaponized and red, but the robots aren't, which, again, you know, we have Red Samurai Baby, which is a confusing character so far, because they fight against the other robots. They're distinctly different in their costuming, and their face is also different. They almost look like they have a coffin inside their actual body, because their head is shaped really strange. But anyway, moving on, let's look at some more details that are interesting. So we have this really weird, like, P letter that's on their stuff. We also have these symbols that are down his guts. We have this L that looks like the LC on Higgs's hood. And so I haven't really seen those elsewhere in terms of font, but we have seen those shapes in quite a few places. So I'm keeping my eyes open for those shapes. We know that we've seen a UCA font on Rainy's outfit that's a little similar to the LC, but not really. It's more of a blocky font, so I don't think it's related to that. There is like a square font above the U on the hips of the robot, but what worries me is at the very top, it almost looks like there's a drawbridge logo, but at the same time, it kind of has like a weird shape to it, and then there's the little like wave or like sea crest icon. So I'm very curious what you guys think of those. I actually think that might be like the symbol of a crab or like a crustacean, because we've seen that one of the other characters, the like, I don't know, he looks like a businessman. He has a crab on his lapel. We haven't really got to him yet, and I'm not sure where he is in my new ordered trailer, but I think that he's probably the one supplying a lot of the weapons. I also think he's going to either be in charge of the beach and be like a president of that area, or he'll be something to do with APAC in general, kind of like the new Bridges president, the new Die Hardman, who we haven't heard anything from. And I know that actor is in the Mission Impossible 8 movie, so it's very likely that they were just busy filming and couldn't be in this game. But there's going to have to be something either in an email or off record that tells us what's happened to Die Hardman. That, or we're going to get an awesome cameo or cutscene where he is doing something really cool. Who knows? So here's just a close-up of that pin, just to kind of like show you guys. I realized that we actually talked about it forever ago, like in the first videos when we talked about this guy. I also want to talk about how I think that Higgs, when he says, I made a lasting connection with the lady in red, which I, again, don't remember where I put that in the trailer, but those words, I was looking at the robots again, and I'm almost thinking, and I hate to say this because it almost feels like a reference to Metal Gear Solid, and I don't want this game to just be a repeat of something else he's done, but, speaking of the AI and the kind of like, are they one intelligence or many? It would be interesting if Amelie was for some reason connected to these robots or able to control them, because they obviously have a connection to the beach. Now, I am of the mind that Tomorrow is the new extinction entity. We haven't got to her dress yet, but she has some really cool signifiers that really make her seem like she's the new Amelie. I think it's interesting how they're hanging, because they're obviously, the thread is going to the coffin on their back, which again is just so weird, because like, what is in there? And then I thought, well, maybe I was wrong about it being coffins for babies or whatever, because I thought the mules have a similar backpack, and it's just like a stabilizer or a jetpack, and you guys had pointed that out to me, that we had that in Death Stranding 1. And so I thought, well, maybe that's all these are. But it really does seem like there's something in there, because how are these strands attached? Strands, so far, we've only seen attached to Lou, Tomorrow, and possibly Higgs, if that's the mask that has the string and not Tomorrow's hand that has the string. So it's really concerning. Like, why is there a string attached? And if it is related to Tomorrow, does she understand that she has control of these things? Does she understand that maybe she is one of those? Is it going to be like, oh my gosh, these are my people and I didn't know that? And maybe like, because she says she comes from a place where babies are never born. And so, I mean, it's very possible that she could be, and a lot of people would think there's probably a part of the beach where the still mothers are at, and like, maybe these are weaponized still mothers. I mean, if I was a mom and found out I had been in a coma and they had taken my baby and deleted it to make it into, like, the internet, I would probably want a machine gun to kill people too. Like, that, they've been in a coma. So, if it's like, oh, it's a still mother's army, then, like, okay, like, that's gonna really change the game. But I don't think it's gonna be anything like that, because then you would have a whole nother level of, like, okay, well, in the first game, they made us, not kill a baby, but we did have to put a baby in to edge knot in order to turn it on, and that was something that Sam struggles with, and, you as a person are supposed to struggle with as well. And so if they were going to make us fight still mothers, that would just be even worse. Like, you wouldn't want to fight them unless the point is that, you're the bad guy, which maybe we are the bad guy. You never know. Briefly, because I accidentally forgot to talk about this vehicle, I wanted to show you guys kind of what I'm assuming is more like the Sand Rover type vehicle. I love the fact that you can actually see Sam. There's very few times in Death Stranding 1 for me personally, because I don't really use the vehicles that much. I'm big on the zip lines. I enjoy like the walking simulation, all that good stuff. But even when I'm driving the trucks, you don't really see Sam, and so you kind of like lose the fun of it. And I saw that someone had posted a pic of him in Death Stranding 1 like going in reverse, and he's got his little arm up like he's such a southern boy just driving his big old truck around. And I just thought That's stuff we're gonna get in this game that I'm so excited about. Like, all the vehicles are pretty much open top. You're really gonna be able to see, which to me implies we're gonna have a lot more combat, which we already knew, but it wasn't clicking for me that, yeah, the reason these are such open vehicles is because Hideo's made a huge change. And just like we saw with the motorcycle race or fight or whatever you want to call it, like, we are shooting while driving, and I think we're gonna have a lot more of that in this game, which I don't know if I'm super into because I'm not a huge combat person, but you know, Hideo's really good about having many difficulty levels, from story mode, easy, difficult, hard, legend, all that stuff. So I do think it's gonna be just really cool. And not to mention, again, I keep bringing up the photographers, but how fun that you'll be able to get the camera much higher. You'll probably be able to get some really neat shots with all these new vehicles. And there's nothing here to really see costume wise, but I'm so excited we can turn the hat around. If we can do that in Death Stranding 1, someone needs to tell me, because I haven't figured it out yet. I also haven't figured out how to get the Santa Claus hat, but that's how I wear my hat in real life, and that's how I want to wear it in the game, because Norman Reedus looks really cool with his backwards hat. And just to add on another grievance, I want to be able to put patches on my hat. How is that not a thing? I cannot believe that we didn't have an ability to put patches on his Bridges hat in Death Stranding 1, so I really, really, really hope that Hideo has thought of that. Because can you imagine having like the Hideo face patch on your Bridges hat or Drawbridge hat, whatever? Like, that's gonna be hilarious. I was also going through my screen caps that I have of the whole trailer, and I realized that we actually see this particular vehicle being made inside the Magellan, which is crazy because I didn't understand where the clip was at first, because it shows these like spinning circle cylinders around it. And then I realized, oh, we're looking inside the Magellan. We're just looking at the other side, which means we're going to get a rocket launcher. If you look at the side of that, there's like a rocket launcher on that vehicle, which is crazy. But anyway, so right here is where we're going to make our vehicles, and we can actually see them be made. And in this next clip, you can see like a little gear shift, or like not a gear shift, a wrench icon down there at the bottom. So this is awesome. So outside of Hartman's lab, we now know that we can create vehicles there. That's what the circle in the ground was. So what I've been thinking are like private rooms or bunkers are simply places we can create vehicles. Now back to what we were talking about. This is the end of the video. The last couple of things that I'm gonna say are, first off, I counted the number of shells that came out of Sam's gun. He shot this thing 19 times before it hit the floor, and it's still alive and it's still shooting. So that's 19 bullets and nothing. I mean, it didn't even really faze that guy. He kind of looks like he's going to get back up anyway. But what I did notice is he had not one string, but 4 or 5 strings. It was kind of hard to see because he was falling and they were flashing in and out of like visibility. But that's 5 strings on him, which typically when you see a puppet, you see 4 strings. So maybe I should go back and check if there's 4 or 5. That would be kind of interesting if there is some sort of puppetry to it, and each limb, it has a string attached, and then the thing inside of it's like pulling it somehow. But that was a weird thing. And then I realized the guy over on the right wasn't even, I mean, he was floating, but he's like up on a ledge, and they're all in like a form of stasis. And then I recognized the building, the roof of it kind of looks like where we see the Titans fight. It looks like it, but it ain't it. I checked. So this backpack, this is the thing I'm going to close on. I'm pretty excited. So you can set your backpack down and it automatically lifts itself back up, whether it's through stabilizers, chiralium, or something else that we just don't know about yet. I love the fact that you can offload your backpack, go kill things, and not kill all your cargo. That was a big issue that I have. Anytime I get into a freaking fight with a BT, I just immediately lose all my cargo because I'm just terrible at standing up, apparently. But I'm practicing and I'm getting better because I want to be able to play Death Stranding 2 and not feel rusty. Right now, I feel like I fall all the time. And with that, we're wrapping up. This is the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for sticking around for this 40-minute session of me talking and telling you everything. You guys are awesome. We've had so many comments, and you guys are catching things that even I'm like not even picking up on. So it's really nice to have so many like fun people in the comments just looking for details, and especially when you guys have played other games or you know a little bit more about certain aspects than I do, especially about Death Stranding 1. There's so much I haven't explored yet or that I've missed simply because I just didn't know about it. And so thank you guys so much. This has been great, and I think the next one's going to be even more fun because we are getting into the actual Higgs part. So I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!